So for today's topic, I thought that I could give you some hint on one of the features that we included in one of the major processes that we released already a year ago, almost. That is the goods receiving. And I want to show you the feature how you can enhance that process using the AI service, right? And then just like a remark before I continue, it's like every time when at least I hear the word AI, still, I'm very cautious about the topic. You must agree that it's like the hype about AI is there, obviously. I've been to a couple of conferences, Infor M3 related ones myself. And every time when I go there, I think like as many of you are looking forward to some really baddest example, right? It's always like the case that you look at it and you see it's like, yeah, okay, fine. But what's next? How can I even utilize it in my daily work? And I'm actually this person myself. So I thought that maybe with this example, I can actually prove to you that we don't necessarily have to wait 20 years for this AI to be completely kicked off, but rather it's already there. It's just matters just to pick it from the floor and utilize it the way you want. Does it sound cool? Yeah, good. All right. So this is again the proposal. I would like to talk a little bit about the business challenges of goods receiving. I would say, what could be problematic about goods receiving? Come on, it should be very straightforward, shouldn't it? Then later on, I will show you the process overview, how our app has been designed, and this part, the feature, AI feature that we included inside. And then obviously I'm going to run a demo. I will also be the one that will run it live. So I'm a little bit scared about it. It's like always standing in this side of the room. It always gives extra goosebumps when you have to do it live. And then later during the presentation, after we stretch our legs a bit, I'm going to talk a little bit about the roadmap. So what we've accomplished so far, what we're currently doing, and what is the future ahead of us. Okay? There's a QA session afterwards, but I guess anytime you have questions, just raise up and just ask. I think we should be very personal here. Even it might sound a little bit like a monologue, but I think it's supposed to be also a discussion, which I hope that it will be eventually. All right, so let's kick off. So, complexity of the goods receiving. You see the man there with a pane and the hat? Sometimes that happens, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be a goods receiving. It can be also any type of different warehouse management process. All depends on the data that you have to maintain, enter inside, let's call it M3 ERP system, right? And when the data is rather straightforward and simple, it's okay. But when it gets more complex, then it starts to be a bit, let's just say, pain for the people that has to do it. I'm talking about the goods receiving. Because typically, when I look at my career and the experience that I have, typically those people that are actually, let's say, touching a product or familiarizing with the product for the first time, actually from the supplier are or is warehouse personnel, after all. They typically use also the handheld devices if we don't want to do it in M3. And we know that the goods receiving in M3 is sort of very straightforward. And it could be, of course, always better to run it in a different way with some help of the system that makes the process even faster. But in general, I think the complexity with the goods receiving is mainly about the large volume of complex data. And by complex data, I mean like this, that for instance, imagine that you have units of measure that are not pieces, but for instance, in meters, and we have decimals, right? Things after the comma, 2 or 3 places, that's one. The other one, for instance, could be very sensitive data, like for instance, prices. Once I've been a consultant for a project, a large, huge Swedish manufacturer inside the drilling industry, which had subsidiary in India. And there legally what's required is actually the very three-way matching process. I'm not an expert in finance, but the entire three-way matching process basically started at very goods receiving. So the poor warehouse personnel were obliged to control the prices between the invoice that's been delivered by the supplier and what's been stated in an agreement. So that was not that the financial department was doing it, but that was actually directly at the very goods receiving. So they were not allowed to process anything as long as the prices were matching. These type of things literally popped up. And of course, no one ever knew about it until you're a consultant of a project, right? So therefore, it's basically related to this compliance and regulatory requirements. Then obviously, with this entire complexity, and besides the prices, I also want to mention containers. Is there any of you that are familiar with GS1 standard? Maybe some of you are. You know that, for instance, if you're using containerization, you have this famous SSCC number, right? 18 digits code. Unique individual, right? Each and every package has its own code, right? So try to type it manually as long as you don't have barcodes. Pain. Another example, attributes. Maybe some of you are using the attributes. Again, it could be very tiny lists, but it could also be huge lists, right? Of things that you have to basically provide. All these different things, like catch weights, attributes, prices, containers, whatever, as long as they're activated in an item, as you know, it's a mandatory thing. You have to provide it when you're doing the goods receiving. And that's the complexity I'm talking about. Then again, space and resource constraints, especially during the peak hours, peak days, so to say, when let's say the volumes are very high, that could be a problem. And then last is obviously technology integration and automation. And by this, I mean all different ways of possibilities that actually can enable that the entire goods receiving process can be done in a rather seamless way. Of course, we are thinking about, okay, integration of suppliers. Yeah, it's fine, it's really cool. But do all always agree for integration? Probably not. Why? Because they don't want to. Because of money. Because of standards, or because of many different reasons. I've seen relations between suppliers or customers where suppliers were very happy to cooperate and make it better. But I also have seen in my line of work situations where customers were even happy to get something from a supplier. So like very many different extremes from one side to another. So if there is no possibility to convince, let's say, a supplier, say, hey, could you use GS1, for instance, because really we have really cool apps for that. Everything will be nicely populated. We just want to release those poor workers that have to handle those things. Then obviously we are in a problem, or not really a problem, but the process might take a longer time. So I thought that once I heard about this entire OCR topic, or back in the days was called form recognizer. Nowadays simply it's called document intelligence. I thought, okay, cool. Why can't we actually use that and take it a little bit step further and apply it in one of the major processes that you can have in goods receiving? Why not? Imagine the following scenario. I think it's very straightforward. I probably can mute myself, but when you look at the pictures, you know what exactly is happening. So you have a physical flow over here. Everything starts at the supplier. They send a vessel in form of a, let's say, truck. There's a goods that are unloaded on a bay, maybe unpacked, maybe repacked, extra labeled, and then eventually put away to the stock. The unloading dock obviously can also be skipped if you have direct put away directly from the truck to the stock. All depends on industry and the process how you're. But what is, I think, the most important here is actually how you process the very moment when the goods arrive at the bay until the moment when they are registered or lying at the final location. And this is the thing that I sort of thought that maybe we can use actually this OCR, the form recognizer or document intelligence, all the same. So the AI intelligence service to facilitate, to recognize the lines, but also fetch the features that are included in a document. So let's suppose that we have a situation where all type of different data inside the document are actually applicable for us. So for instance, containers, catch weights, priority dates, right? Lot numbers, whatever. And we want to utilize it and apply it inside ERP. Why typing it in? And why not scanning? Because normally some of those things, you can't just simply barcode it. It would make no sense. So I thought that maybe actually it would be good to utilize it, to recognize the very document and simply parse it over to Novacura Flow in form of its digital counterpart. And therefore, I found this through my colleagues here. We applied this technology in other apps in IFS marketplace. And I thought that maybe, why not? Why not doing it? So document intelligence, in short, is basically a service that uses the advanced technological capability to take the content of the paper-based document and transform it into its digital form. So you can actually later on work with this data. So it's not just that you take a picture and that's it, but it's like literally extracting it out of it. And then whatever you do with this data, it's absolutely up to you. And of course, then someone will ask, okay, but how to do it even? Of course, you have to do some form of a work in the background. You have to teach that model, teach that service basically, that this particular delivery note or this particular invoice comes from that supplier. Because as you know, if let's imagine we have a situation, we have 5 different suppliers, most likely all of them will have different delivery note templates, right? Different rules, regulations, logos, whatever. But there are some things that are very common, something that are very relevant for us to process things in M3. And that's exactly what has to be done. So inside of Microsoft Azure Document Intelligence, you have to simply train a model, recognize that, okay, this is the supplier A, and this is how their delivery note looks like. So for instance, if you have 5 suppliers, we can train 5 different models, upload a couple of documents, I remember it was only 5, and then basically the thing is done. And then you can literally enjoy it and basically extract everything depending on which supplier send the goods. And of course, you can use also the pre-built models, which are basically based on the standard layouts, but the customized ones are, I think, more applicable in that case. And obviously, once those things are recognized, the data is extracted, we use a very typical web service to fetch it backwards to the Flow client, and then you just process it, basically. So that's a bit like how it looks from technical perspective. Imagine that, if you remember before that, I had this tiny thing surrounded, right? So the magic basically happens in that black arrow there. And this is where, if you just like span it over a bit, this is what's happening. So I'm using, in my example, I will use my phone. I will actually take a picture of my phone. I will upload the picture inside the Microsoft Azure Document Intelligence service. That will extract the document and the values that I'm interested. But then on top of that, what we also did is that we applied extra check inside M3 through Ion to recognize if what I'm scanning actually makes sense. So I'm actually running an API, extra API, after recognizing it to check if there is really an order like this and if there are really lines that are waiting for me. So it can't be just that I scan whatever and I just get whatever. So those things are all compared. So once I fetch the information back, it goes back to the Flow, and I put it all together and sum it up. Does it sound cool? Good. All right, so I think I'm ready for a demo, unless you have any questions before I jump straight to the real stuff.
Yeah, what is the connection between Flow and the Azure AI document?
These are web services. Mm-hmm. Yeah, established connectors that we actually have in standard already that does the work. Yes. And of course, I'm not that much technical about the very connection. I'm always normally the person that I see the example, the beautiful imagine ideas. But of course, if you have more specific questions about what type of web services, how to train the models, obviously I have a team that basically did that. So yeah, I'm happy to get those questions and come with the answers if they are too complicated for me to answer. Good. So this is how it's going to look like. I'll try to recognize my document that I have here, a piece of paper. For that example, I've chosen an item which is container managed. It has attribute model attached to it, and it also has lot handling. So for those of you that are not M3 with M3 backgrounds, I guess in IFS it's the same, that your part number, using your terminology, most likely can have different characteristics activated. Like for instance, it is with extra handling unit that you have to provide as a number, or it has a batch control activated, or there are some attributes. So for instance, this item with this batch is color green, size large, material plastic, right? So I believe that the same features probably you also have. So that's exactly what I told here to the M3 community, because most likely they recognize directly what I mean. So I will have a container managed item, container management 7, so the SSCC typical package management, attributes control, and lot handling. So I will recognize the document. I will then summarize it, aggregate, and fetch and see how many lines in the purchase order, in fact, all those rows in my documents are. And then I will go through the entire reporting process. Okay, shall we try? Good. All right, so for that purpose, actually, I'm gonna run it on my phone. I think it's big enough. So I go for Flow Classic still. To 104.1 supplied chain execution module, we have receive purchase order. And there, the first thing what we typically do when we run our apps is that we always have an option to select how we want to search. That's basically the first thing. And we always give a user a possibility. So here, as you can see, we have three options. We have a detailed bulk and image. I would start in the middle. The bulk is basically the way that you provide input by just either scanning the values or typing them in, finding them in a list when you browse for it. But basically, you provide the input that later on will be used for API, right? And then you get, let's say, a massive result from which you fetch each and every line that you're interested in. Detailed search, on the other hand, is what we do is that we run directly API. So we fetch entire list. And then by using a scanner or a device, we actually fetch exact lines that we are interested in. So we are actually building a list. So there's a difference between them. And then we uploaded this image search. And that's the one that I'm going to tap in. So I'm going to search for the lines through actually the AI service that is connected via connectors to the Flow server. So here I'm choosing the supplier. So imagine the following scenario. Once the guy comes over from the truck, he comes over to me and hands over documents like, okay, where are you from? Okay, you're Novacura. Fine. Okay. And then we get this one. It's like, all right, can you just hand me over this document? Yes, please. Thank you. And this is what I'm going to do. Let's see. I will not be particularly careful. Yeah, picture is rather ugly, right? There are some cables on it, but that's good. That's good. Let's see if the model can be recognized. From the distance, it's rather hard to distinguish what are the things inside it, right? But to tell you in short, at the very top of the picture, you see basically the header information of this particular delivery of the purchase order. And there's a place where there is a reference order. So my purchase order is registered in M3.
Just one
Yep.
question. So you had to choose the supplier first.
Yep.
Is it not possible for the system to recognize the supplier as well?
Probably it is. Probably it is. But of course, we didn't want to make it that hard for it. Let's put it this way. Yes. But yeah, it's a good input. The idea was from the start like this, that we should try to directly put it to the deep water, and then the system sort of figure out what it is. Yeah. But of course, it might take a little bit longer time. Supposing that we have more than 5 different models trained. Yeah. But it's a good input, absolutely. So what I did in the previous picture, when I chose a supplier, I actually also indicated already to the AI service that this is the model that you will look at. This is this type of format that you will extract information from, right? So in a way, I sort of hinted up a little bit, right? Okay, so are we ready to press the button? Okay, this is when the magic starts. So I upload the document, and now upon pressing next, this is all these graphs that I showed you 2 slides before about what's going to happen, that it would just bounce between AI and Flow, and then Ion and M3 and backwards again, right? So let's see. It will take some time. Because there are many different things that are happening simultaneously. But now it seems like it analyzes my receipt. Very good. It extracted the data. And now, most likely, I'm checking now and run the API. I came back, and this is what I got. So everything here is already here, right? And it's not scanned. It's literally a data in a list that you can richly work with. So let's have a look at the first line, basically. We have a supplier, we have an order line. There is not subline, so there is a 0 there. Item, lot number, container, so this 18 digits code, like SCCC. And on top of that, we also have the order summary and remaining quantity. So how much of that order has to be still put away? So you see there's a fresh order. Nothing has been put away yet, because that's 1,000 pieces. And the doc quantity stated it's 10. So my one particular line over here literally says it's 10 quantities. And on top of that, I also have all these different things divided into lot numbers. So I have 3 lot numbers, 19 packages. I can scroll down to check if everything is correct, but if I have a full trust to my supplier, I can simply tap next to continue. And as you see, I have an edit. Guess what it could do? You go inside the list and you change values if you think they're not correct. Things can happen, right? So I think it's good to have also this backup that in case something has been not correctly read, you can always switch it. And obviously, you can always go back and take a picture again. You can also have an option to attach the pictures if you have a bunch of pages at the same time. That also works. Upon pressing next, I recognize that, oh, actually, from all these 19 different rows, in fact, it's only one order line, all summed together up. It's okay. I can take next to continue. And this is the moment where the process starts, when I have to report each and every value so that it's fine with M3. Otherwise, it will complain. So the first thing that I have here, you see, is a lot. I have directly a default value called multi, which indicates to the user that, there are multiple lot numbers, to be more accurate, 3 only, which are already integrated there. In every single screen here, I always have a view. I can always go back and check what I've done, what I've scanned. So it's always a control. So let's imagine I don't want to change them, because here I could technically also switch the lot number if I want to. We even make it even better. So we applied a certain environment property that controls what values from the document actually should be remembered and suggested. So for instance, because sometimes it happens a lot that, for instance, suppliers sending an invoice delivery note with their lot numbers, but we don't want them. We want ours, right? So we just it's not even remembered. It's not even shown on the list. So we have even that flexibility with basically every typical mandatory value that you might have. But I'm happy with this, what I got. Let's imagine that everything that is here is going to be parsed into M3. Report package. For those of you that are working with package management, you know that in order to put away in goods receiving a line inside a package, you have to have a package already on stock before. So it's like a mandatory step that has to be created basically in the background or manually. Obviously, we don't want things manually done. So I'm going to create packages right now. I have numbers, right? But I don't have them physically in MMS 470, if you know the program. So I don't have them on stock yet. So the only thing if you have to indicate, if you're using package management, is the very handling unit, right? So what type of package type we're going to use. So let's say we're going to use Novacura box for it. And I press next. And you see what's happening? A couple of APIs are running simultaneously. So 19 times 2. So I'm checking if the package exists. If not, let's create it. And done. All right? Attributes. I have all those different things, already packages in different lot numbers. So I would wish to apply certain attributes. Of course, I can always just assign the way I want directly and just press next, but I would like to have a little bit of flavor. So let's say that since we have 3 different lot numbers, I will apply different attributes for those 3 lot numbers. So lot number 1001, I think there are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then let's apply some attributes. Color, black. Material, glass. Size, large. Next. And when I go back again, as you see, attributes are already assigned to my values. And I'll do the same procedure 2 more times. Okay. Just to add something different, so instead it's going to be blue color, mental, and size medium. And the final batch, which is those 2. All right. Red color, material, plastic, and size, for instance, small. This is my summary, more or less. I'm always there at the end. What shall I do with this one? I would like to print a label. Why not? Let's just get extra flavor. So at the end, what's going to happen is that I'm going to report those packages, those lines inside those packages, I'm going to pack them into, and I'm also going to get 19 labels. So if you feel that there will be some vibration from my watch, that's the labels coming up. Let's find some location. Let's say we just dump it dump it somewhere on the floor because the driver otherwise would charge for the fact that we're keeping him. I can adjust the printing if I want to. If I have more labels in my inbox, email, spam, maybe I don't want to do that. I can always adjust the printing. So which printer if you want to print out, or I just want to go directly to an email. I can also choose the quantity per label. So there could be situations when, for instance, you report a row in M3, which says it's 100, but in reality, these are 4 packages, 25 each. So there, for instance, you can print 4 labels with 25 quantity per label. Extra facilitation. I remember a couple of customers actually complaining about it. It's like, why can't we get it? It's like, yes, you can. All right, so this is the moment of truth. When I press receive, I'm always afraid the final button, you know? But let's just hope. Let's see if my hands start to vibrate a bit. Yeah, but this is what's basically happening. So the entire process of complicated containers with lot numbers and attributes, we actually fixed in one go. And we also get a batch of 19 labels that we can attach. So at this moment, basically, physically, the users would stick the labels on and just move it all to this one label. Now my hand is vibrating. Oh, so that would be all for the demo. I showed you a little bit of in general, how the goods receiving app that we produce for the marketplace looks and works. What you've seen here is that you've seen every single step, user step, but as you might know, we put a lot of work to make those apps configurable. So each and every step can be completely automated. So actually, if I would be very, very stubborn, once I would just take a picture of this document, I can press one button next and everything is done in one go, if I want to. But yeah, let's imagine I don't have that much trust to the supplier. There still has to be some form of control, right? Okay, I think that would be all for the demo part. I'm just wondering if you have any questions, what you've seen so far, any comments?
Would it be possible for any of us to use a piece of paper, or how are you like? Sorry, you said before that you didn't really know the technicality.
Yeah.
But, like, could you give me the app as a customer and then start using it tomorrow?
Yeah, the commercial part is maybe someone else has to answer for this question, but I'll put it this way. How to do it? It's absolutely, first of all, explained in our documentation. It's rather straightforward. Yeah. Because obviously you have to do some form of job at the very beginning, that you have to become a subscriber into the AI service, and then you obviously have to know how to train the model. But that is completely documented on our thing. So it's absolutely achievable, available there. Connectors are available. So I think that's what you probably are asking for, essentially. So yes. Mm-hmm.
So the app is part of our marketplace.
That's correct.
Yeah, and it's part of a subscription base that we get everything in it. And that app specifically for M3, part of the marketplace, but there's also like this form recognized component that we utilize for anything.
Yeah.
That is also part of the marketplace app. So you can have to do it for anything else.
Yeah.
And I think that Paul talked about the KLM case yesterday. They use it to be able to extract information from travel expense apps. Yeah. So you use the same component.
Exactly. So it's actually very good input here from Axel. It's like, it doesn't necessarily have to be used in goods receiving. It's like wherever.
They use it for POs, or
exactly.
They use it for deduction reports, and that kind of process where they get deduction from the customers. They use it for invoicing, invoices as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Think about, for instance, quality inspections that you get, and you run, let's say, QMS programs. You get certificates from the suppliers. And you get the results that you have to provide in QMS 400. Some of you may know that. Those things can actually come in a paper, right? Or, as a PDF file attached, saying that, those things were tested. You can punch it directly there too, using the OCR.
What other uses do you think you could use the technology for? Any other come to mind?
Invoice processing. probably it'll be the next time I would try to utilize it. And basically, yeah, it's a good question. Where is the moment where actually you really interact with a physical document? Because typically when you do something inside of M3, obviously you can always print it out, but the information is there electronically. So obviously it would not make sense. Like for instance, if you try to use the picking list, but the picking list can be fetched directly via API. So yeah, no need for it. Exactly.
Is that widely used in M3?
Actually, I don't know, to be honest. I never, this type of module, I think it's not that popular, unless any of you guys actually, travel expense. It's like, we don't use that. No, but that's the funny thing. It's just that there are two ERPs, but there are moments where they are like slightly like this. They're supporting different, like IFS, I understand well. It's very, very well known in places like work orders, etc., like mining industries. Like I haven't met that many customers in M3 that does it. On the other hand, we have food and beverage, for instance, which is a lot. So it's like catch weight handling, things like these.
But you said it and you use the app, but you can also do it automatically, like set up a mailbox.
Yeah.
And you send just a mail with an attachment, like a PO or whatever.
Yeah.
And Flow can go into that mailbox, pick up that mail, extract that PDF, and send it to the engine for analysis, and get that information, put an order into your system. There's a lot of these kind of cases where you don't even need a client to process that information.
Yeah.
I had a question now. It took around, I don't know, 10 to 12, 14 seconds. How much of this is the connections and how much is the Azure crunching?
Yeah, my guess would be based on the background messages. It's probably the API part and everything that probably takes like rather a second, right? So it's more like the recognizing it and bring it back. That's what, because it has to fetch the model, extract the data, push it back. So I think that's what takes 75% of the time. Yeah. But we didn't have to wait that long, right?
No, it's super fast comparing to
So again, it's like, it's not always applicable, but I just wanted to show that an idea, a concept, right? That you can have, as I said, a lot of different things with dates and stuff that are very, very cumbersome to put in manually. Okay, no more questions? Feedback later on at the fika? Good. All right, then I guess I can continue with the roadmap. Unless you would like to stretch for 1 minute or something, take a glass of water over there. Then I will continue. Yes, so I've also been asked to prepare some form of a roadmap. So give you a bit of a hint what's been done so far, what we are currently busy with, and the future. So the entire journey, at least from my perspective, started when I started to work on Novacura last year in January. There we had to sort of define what we actually want to do, what type of things we want to focus on first. Prioritization was a rather challenging part, but it quickly came to our mind that obviously what is basically the module of M3 that customers normally are requesting? It's warehouse management. So our journey started with the supply chain execution. The weird name, by the way, it's not me, it's Infor. That's their nomenclature, by the way. So I decided to simply adopt those names. So supply chain execution and all the apps like goods receiving, picking, movement, all the stuff started to pop up one after each other since last year, beginning. And then we also had an idea what to put, what type of like gear we should put in to make those apps even more applicable. So therefore, the concept of the multi-data barcode handling showed up. What I mean by this, that basically, yeah, as example of GS1, you know, M3 people, we like GS1. Who doesn't? Come on. So of course, I tried to push this idea as much as possible, use the power of Novacura, and try to make it possible that with one scan, when one shot of a scanner, you can actually identify a couple of values at the same time. We know from our experience, M3 experience, that we don't like to type things in manually. If it's barcoded, the more barcoded the solution, the better. That's also always my motto. I don't want to touch the system. I mean, it's beautiful, the buttons are beautiful, but I prefer to shoot. That's like the way how it is. Just to make it simply things easier, right? I always put myself in a situation of a person who actually doing this stuff. That sometimes like even a shot of a scanner, when you accumulate all this, how much time you actually can save per day, it's outstanding. Then at some point of time this year, we got to the point where once we had like really rich supply chain execution module, we started to develop apps for manufacturing. So first report operational material showed up using our basically standards. And then the beautiful month of October last year, 6.15, with beautiful, fantastic features showed up. I said to my team, say, hey, this is the time we have to lift stuff up. So of course I've been admired by condition to height. I have to admit that even step scanning out of forward is like, especially the first one, make that the apps suddenly start to look a little bit shrinked, right? The condition to height enables us to basically have multiple different conditions. And if you recognize the item, you basically display exactly what you want. You didn't need to build another extra user step to cater that need. It was really, really cool. I would say a game changer basically for us. And we are utilizing it a lot. A fun fact, or not, it's not a fun fact, actually a true fact, is that we even are using a condition to height, and we try to identify what type of screen size you have. And depending on the screen size, the data that is present in a table is using different objects. So we have, let's say, a machine of that size, bigger, we use grid. But if we have this one, we are using list. So basically, grid and list are always there. It's just visible depending on the size of the screen. So those type of ideas, right? It's also a bit of a UX, right? But it's just an approach. It's not that I don't like grid in a mobile form. It's just that in certain situations, it takes too much space when you have a lot of data inside it. And we know that the mobile client, I would say, in my opinion, the major struggle is actually the size, right? How to put it that you don't want too much, but at the same time, enough. And then another idea came up. We call it a workflow configurator. As you know, our apps are very configurable. And by that, I mean we use a lot of so-called environment properties. Soon it will be a thing of the past, because those things will be not available. We actually decided to go for some other way of doing. I will tell you later. So we are using actually the table type of environment properties to store information about how you can sort of configure app, how fast it could be, how automated it could be. So when I told you example that actually with one shot of my camera, I can literally report everything in one go, I would probably use my configurate environment properties to configure this application. And I thought that, okay, we can actually configure those environment properties, but you know how it works in Studio. You have to go in, you have to switch the client to the Studio, you go back, you find a table. And I thought, is there any easier way to do it? So we actually develop an app that configures other app. And on top of that, we are using a pin step to actually provide all the documentation for the marketplace. So technically, imagine like us consultants, right? You go around in a warehouse, you're implementing our marketplace application to the customer. And the customer is like, look here, we are scanning and there's something that's, there's information that's important, but I trust the system. So can we just make it automate? I just take a phone and I just go in, log in to my workflow configurator, change this, save it. That's it. I don't have to carry this one any longer. So it really facilitates. So we are actually using it very heavily, that one workflow configurator.
Quick question. Does that edit a property that the workflow is depending on?
Yes, exactly. So you're choosing, actually I can show you, why not? You're choosing a particular application and you change the environment properties there. So I'm choosing first this, okay, of course. There we go. I have to select a user because we also make a user dependent. So for instance, you can utilize the groups. So let's imagine that there are 4 people that are working in unloading ramp, first shift, whatever. You can actually set it up in the Studio. So you know how the grid works, but let's focus only on myself here. Then I'm choosing a particular application I want to configure. Let's say receive purchase order. And this is what I got here. I have a set of environment properties defined, and basically I can adjust them the way I want. And as I mentioned before, on top of that, we have instructions, in case you forgot how they work. So it's just like a reminder, what are applicable values there. And if you try to put something that is not there in the list, then of course you will get an error directly. So for instance, if I want to say, I want to see, when I'm using the bulk search for purchase orders, I want to see those ones which actually have been confirmed rather than created. So for instance, I put this one and I save, done. So of course you can go to the studio, find it, change it, refresh it, go back. But you know, especially when you're testing things a lot, that helps dramatically. And now we are here on our conference, second day. And it's also something that affects us a lot, because at a certain point of the time, we decided that we should also lift our applications from Marketplace to Flow Connect. And that's the major focus right now we have. So one app after each other basically has to be moved there. As you know from yesterday's presentation, some job has to be done related to the scripting. Connectors also slightly changed, but yeah, it's basically stuff that has to be done from the start. And later on, at a certain point of time, very, very near future, I would say, even of this year, we probably decide that any other apps will be continued and developed only in Flow Connect. So I think we already reached the moment where I say, okay, no more classic. But it's tricky. It's tricky, of course. What else is planned for this year? And of course, all those supply chain manufacturing apps, once they started, we continued, all depending on prioritization, who comes first with an idea, what we need, etc. Hopefully someone, maybe next month, we will be able to report and create our first app for maintaining operational documents. And it's going to be the first time we're going to actually connect it to IDM for the start. So this app will basically control all type of external documents that you actually use in the production process. We have heard a bunch of cases from customers where basically complain about the mess with the documents. They're coming, certificates from suppliers, plannings, drawings, whatever. Yes, they have storage place, but it's like everybody has its own. There's no like some form of a unified way to follow the production and at the same time reporting documents and checking them if they are correct. So that would be probably the first app that will actually interact with IDM. And at later stage, we will also extend it to any other services that can hold documents like SharePoint, Google Docs, things like these. And then last but not least, first app on a portal. That's my dream. Hopefully it will come true. As a candidate, we've chosen the Work Center Rescheduler. Maybe some of you are working with PMS 230. I don't know, production, from operational from a work center perspective. We want to use the beautiful Gantt chart and the portal to show it in a nicer view and just, you know, by drag and drop replanning the operations based on capacity and load. So that's the plan. That's the optimistic plan that I hope we will realize this year. It's just only 3 more things, and then we can discuss it. I know it's really hard to, after yesterday evening, to sit that long. Next year, we will heavily depend and focus on maintenance module. So we will release our first applications for MOS programs. There was some idea that we also had to introduce so-called parent apps. So think about them as so to say, application bundles. I don't know if that's the right terminology. It's not a package, but it's like an app that sort of like aggregates all other different order categories. To give you an example, we will create something which will be called receive inbound delivery, which will consolidate POs, DOs, ROs, and CRs all together in one list. Because sometimes, as you know, for the drive for inbound pickers, it doesn't really matter where the truck comes from. It's just a truck with some stuff inside, and there is a planned delivery date, expected date to be arrived, and based on that, they have to build their capacities, their workload. They need to also plan which worker is supposed to show up, etc. So those type of parent apps, as we call it here, will also show up. We will hit sales management at the, I don't know, second or third quarter next year. So create customer orders, portal to maintain rescheduling of customer orders. And then the big thing, the integration to Marketplace into the Hub Connect, that's, of course, will affect us dramatically from then on. Hopefully, we will be able to download the apps directly from there or share it actually into a customer's organization. That's going to be really cool. And then procurement and much more, right? All depends on what will come in form of ideas, not Novacura.com, and the priorities from partners and customers. This just to show you that I'm not empty-worded. There's like a massive Excel list that I just wanted to show that there is there. It's not just like slogans, but it's there and it's waiting for its time in a queue. And I'm always happy to shuffle it, be flexible enough so that, yeah, we can reprioritize stuff.